Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Out of the Park 23 as the Minnesota Twins. And this is going to be our off-season episode. So, we're getting closer to our big breaking point of 2030, which is where we're going to have a lot of decisions to make, a lot of turnover. But there are some decisions actually this year that we're going to have to make regarding some pieces this year. So, Cano, I waived DFA'd last year in the middle of July because he was just unusable. And the contract obviously is up to 3.6 million, wanted 4, I believe. Here, that was a pretty easy non-tender. Let's move on. Giovanni Moran is in a sort of a holding pattern for me right now because I really don't like last season. It's really problematic to me because you'll note that his BABIP is actually lower than the last 2 years. The FIP has always been high for him, even when he's had really, really good seasons. And this year was just not good. I really don't want to only have Nardi as a left-hander in my bullpen. So if I can't make a trade for another lefty, then I'll tender him probably. But I do have an offer out there, which I will talk about once I'm done with this, and then we'll kind of see where we end up going with that. Nardi, I have an offer out. I'm going to bring him back. Colby White will come back. Kavoko's gone. We've kind of already talked about this one, where he didn't hit lefty super well for me. That's really the job that he is meant to play on this team. Plus, his role becomes more redundant with some of the things that we're going to be doing with our team. He has 3 rings. This was really the only one he was really playing a role on. And really, this just wasn't a super great year for him overall. I mean, he was definitely usable in the playoffs just against lefties, but I think with some of the prospects we have coming up and with some of the pieces that will be moved around, not as much of a role for him moving forward. So now that he actually is looking for money, no thanks. Amaya is under a pretty similar role as Moran. Of if I can find a backup shortstop that's better than him, or is kind of roughly this tier of player, that I'll move on from him. But kind of as it stands, I'm fine keeping him around as well. Perfectly servable player. $2 million isn't a ton. So I'm fine keeping him around unless I can find something that's better. As far as in actually our system, there's still not really a ton yet. Potentially a David Coppage could maybe fill this role, but he's just such a bad hitter that I don't want him to. He's like kind of about the same defensively, but Encarnacion's not really a shortstop. Only the max of 40 there, even though he's a better hitter. So kind of our shortstops that we have, I mean, Mejia, I guess, could be okay as a shortstop. I should probably get that up to 50 because he's been playing really well. This is another one of our pickups from St. Louis when we traded away Joe Ryan and Chris Paddock, as well as the Baez that we got in that deal as well. So I might move Mejia up to AAA, have him get reps at short, and potentially look to have him take over that role next year. I guess sort of while I'm out of that, before we get to the big kind of question and what you guys probably noticed was going on there, is this is the trade that I am going to be submitting, and we'll kind of see what potentially that would be, because this covers sort of a couple of the spots. So the people we'd be trading away is Indigo Diaz, who just hasn't been good for me. Yeah, the BABIP is high, so maybe there's something here, but at this point he's out of options, and I'm not convinced on him. So I'm gonna see what value I can get for him. Jaden Brinkley was a draft pick of ours this year in the 14th round. who I'm guessing some people view as a starter because of the 70 stamina. Looks like he started once this year. But I don't see him as a starter. I see him as a decent reliever, and like I would like to have a player like this in my bullpen eventually. But if he's potentially has starting pitcher value, then I'd prefer to trade him. So the three people we'd be getting back are this guy Ismael Castillo, a reliever who's coming off of two pretty good seasons. He's 23. Obviously, is probably especially this one you can kind of throw out because he would have been 22-year-old rookie in rookie ball. Yeah, that's sort of what you would expect. Was good there. So seeing some of that and the 75 stamina is very intriguing as far as potentially a stopper-esque role, or at the very least a long relief role where you could pitch him a lot. So this is a guy that I'm intrigued by. Frank Mazzucato, left-hander, 3 option years. Was good out of the bullpen for them this year. This guy's not a starter, no matter how much he says that he is. So that's really only 2 pitches. This changeup's not good enough to start. So this is the guy that I sort of imagine taking over for Moran in that left-hander role, assuming I can get this trade to go through. And then Edwin Arroyo Jr. is kind of the potential replacement for Amaya that I'm looking at. Coming off of a pretty good year hitting. Had a pretty good year hitting at the beginning of 26 as well in Double-A. To the point where I think that maybe in a couple of years might actually be a reasonable hitter. Same position rating as Amaya at shortstop. Doesn't have the beneficial personality traits, but I think for the couple of years as a defensive replacement at short, I think this is super reasonable. Switch hitter is nice. So this is the 3 people that I would be acquiring. In that, I would like this to go through without having to make too many adjustments to it. And yeah, so that would be allowing me to kind of non-tender kill people. So then the last one is interesting. So Sal Frelick has been a very good piece on this team since I acquired him from Milwaukee in 2023. Was an all-star this year, as well as in 25, I believe. Yeah, it's funny how 26 is maybe his best season, but he wasn't an all-star there. And so why would you trade somebody like this? Or non-tender somebody like this? Well, 2 reasons. One is because the contract arbitration estimate is $9.2 million for this offseason for a corner outfielder who does not hit home runs. I don't think he's hit 10 in a single year. I think this 45 is a lie. I think it's more like 35 to 40. And gets on base at a reasonable clip, steals some bases. I'm surprised that he struck out 20% of the time this year. That's definitely higher than looks like his kind of general average, but not by a ton. So this, I think, is also a lie. And there's I think a pretty good chance he wins a Gold Glove this year. But corner outfield is something I have a lot of. And I have some good people, too. Like this guy, Ty Evans, I would like to get some runs in the majors, has more of a backup center field option here. There's Emmanuel Rodriguez as well, where obviously this season was kind of lost due to injury, but is another player that I think could fill a pretty similar role to Frelick. We have Ramos and Lara coming up. Lara's potentially our center fielder after Buxton leaves. We also have this guy, Lascano, was one of our draft picks in 27 this year, who started an A-ball, had a really good year. So another very good left center right fielder, who is another potential piece coming up. Espinal as well was decent enough for us this year, at least for a little bit he was. But so basically the point here is I have a lot of options that I'd like to see get some playing time. Atrian, I think, is a perfectly serviceable everyday left fielder defensively. Obviously, the bat's nuts. We kind of already saw that where he had a terrible first month of the season and still ends up with that good of an OPS plus. So I think Frelick is going to end up being non-tendered. I looked into trading him quite a bit, and I couldn't find anything where I liked the value for it. So I think that the most realistic thing for a player like that is probably that he would just get non-tendered. And I'll take some hits here on fan interest because he is extremely popular locally. The contract that he is open to signing a long-term contract that's honestly pretty reasonable. Where like this deal I don't hate, right? Of there's nothing above 13.6. But the problem is that I have other pieces that I'm interested in locking up long term that are coming up through the system that I think are more interesting. And no home runs out of a corner outfielder I don't like. Like left field is a spot where you really want a big bat. Like you want somebody like Joshua Baez, right? You want this 138 to 140 OPS plus. You want home runs. And even the year Adrian finished with is more the type of year that I would want from a corner outfielder. If Frelick was playing center, then that would be a completely different story. Where I would take this bat from a center fielder, even though I don't think that he's actually this good. So I do think the plan here is to non-tender him and kind of see what happens with that. Of this definitely could be a mistake. I will not argue that. But he doesn't hit lefties. And yeah, we're going to see where this leads us. Could this be a mistake? Absolutely. This is definitely one of the decisions that I'm the least confident in, but it's one that I think a GM would make, because corner outfielders are the most replaceable parts on most teams. We've seen in my organization I have a lot of corner outfielders that are out there, and it frees up some money. So I think that's where we're going to go with this, because we're also with Tyler Ayers probably starting the year with us next year is going to necessitate moving Kirilloff off of first base, because Miranda will go to first, Ayers will play third, and then if I want to keep Kirilloff's bat in the lineup, then that's sort of what I have to do. And unfortunately, trading Kirilloff is impossible. So really what we're seeing here is this is why you don't sign players like Kirilloff to the deal that I signed him to. Because I'm pretty much forced to have this contract on my team, and I don't want that money sitting on the bench where he's not super useful. So Frelick is going to end up being non-tendered here, and yeah. So now after this, I'm going to play a little bit of time up through arbitration, see what's available for free agency, so we can talk some more about that. But I wanted to do the beginnings of arbitration here, show you guys sort of what the plan is, and then we'll be back shortly with seeing what's going on in free agency. And we are back after the arbitration period has ended. Free agency filings have just happened. And we are now going to talk about our plans for this offseason. So first and foremost, that trade with Seattle did go through. So Mazzucato is here. The shortstop, Edwin Arroyo Jr. is here. And the other guy is in Double A. What it took was we added in two pieces to it. Jim Carr is a catcher who, frankly, I don't think is really a catcher. Has not hit at all in rookie ball. Obviously, coming out of high school, you have to give it a little bit of a break, but I have my concerns about him as a catcher. You could probably play somebody like this at first base too, but the bat just isn't really there, in my opinion, to be a first baseman. He's not really a great catcher either, so that was fine for me to give him up. And then this guy, Almandi Diaz, I don't think is really going to amount to anything. Maybe a reliever, but that's really it. He hasn't been super great so far. He had a good 2027, but outside of that, sort of whatever. And that was even only at high A. He's 25. So I was fine with that. Obviously, we talked about Diaz. We talked about Brinkley. So that trade went through. We did end up non-tendering all of the people that we had talked about before. So this is sort of what we're looking at right now for our planned roster. Tyler Ayers will come up and be our starting third baseman. And Arroyo will be our backup shortstop, second baseman. Atrian will play every day in left field. Rodriguez will be our fourth outfielder. Marcos Cabrera is up again. This is probably the most iffy spot, I think. The biggest advantage he has here is that both he can play third base and that he's a right-handed hitter, which gives me good counterbalance with Kirilloff. Because Miranda's going to be my, everyday starter. Is going to play about this many games. So that's sort of what we're looking at there. I don't really have a great other kind of corner infielder. So that's a little bit concerning for me. We do have Collier down here, Encarnacion as well, where, maybe Collier shows me something. But if I do have a injury there, that could be interesting. Though I think the most likely situation is kind of a playing Kirilloff every day, actually at first base. And if it's an injury to Ayers, move Miranda to third. And if it's Miranda, then yeah. As far as free agency goes, Torkelson is out here. Unfortunately, the tempting dream of Vlad Guerrero did not come to pass. He signed a where's the deal here? I believe it's a 8-year, $37 million a year. Yeah, so 7,259 for Vlad Guerrero. I think that's pretty reasonable for a guy who has 2 MVPs in this save. So that would have potentially been fun to see what he could have commanded on the open market, but that's not. I'm surprised he's actually not extremely popular for someone who's been that good. So going over awards as well quick before we get really into free agency. I believe this is the starting point is with Gold Gloves. See if here Frelick did win and now is a free agent. Just to kind of show this quick. This is what he is looking for in the free agent market. Obviously quite a bit more than if we had just looked to extend him. So yeah, we'll kind of see what he ends up getting on the open market. I hope for him that he does get a good deal, because Frelick was a good piece for us. Just not worth it with some of the other options that we have. Correa wins another Gold Glove. We're almost up to 2 full rows worth of awards for him. It's his 6th Gold Glove in 7 seasons. And every year except for 23 in this actual playing through of the save, he's won it. So yeah, it looks like Chip Hale's going to be our bench coach. We can't actually control this, but it is what it is. So Scott Barlow, who was then not re-signed by Baltimore, wins his 2nd straight Reliever of the Year award. Nardi and Duran both get votes, as well as Colby White and James Karinchak all got votes. Silver Slugger, the only one that we got was Mario Atrian. Does get it as the designated hitter. Hopefully he'll win some in left field now as well. I'm excited to see what he does every day, and I'm excited to see what his defensive stats actually are, if this is actually him putting in some more work, because I do remember these ratings being lower in the past. Yeah, so like you can see the 50 here is sort of what he was sitting at, and now it's up a little bit higher. So he will be our left fielder every day. Then go to Rookie of the Year. Adrian finishes second. So somebody else did vote for him over Gomez. Probably just seeing Gomez only playing the 97 games, but he had such a good year. Surprised he did finish with so many more votes than Connor Crisp, who I thought had a outstanding season. I mean, pretty much the entire year up, 3.4 ERA, 243 strikeouts. So he's going to be a problem in the future. Baldelli wins another Manager of the Year award. Let me see. Can I actually... So this is his third in 4 seasons of the save. So I'm wondering how much of that is just, hey, won the World Series because Craig Driver wins it for the Nationals. Though I guess both of us were the number 1 seed, so I guess that does make some sense. Yep, there's the Guerrero resign. Primarily out of loyalty to the organization. Yeah, I mean, that's actually probably true that he only signed for $37 million a year. I do bet he could have got 40 plus in free agency. So this is our first Cy Young win. Is Corbin Burns wins the Cy Young award. I think very well deserved. Had a very good year. Josh Simpson gets 2 votes as well. Also had a very good year. But I think when you go win 17 games with a 3 ERA, like Burns did for the World Series champs, it's not super surprising that he wins the Cy Young award. And then Vlad gets MVP, 32 of 32 votes. Hard to disagree with that. Baez got votes. Corbin Burns got votes. Blake Hunt got votes. So, yeah, and then Torkelson was the runner-up and is now a free agent. So I'll be very interested to see what Torkelson actually does end up signing for. He wants a pretty good deal, $32 million a year. I think that's probably hard to pay, just because of the fact that he's really only had this one really, really good year. 24 and 25 were both pretty good, but he was awful in 23. It's kind of fine in 22. So, I mean, he obviously picked a very good year to have his by far best year of his career. But what he actually gets in free agency, I'm not super sure about. Then, okay, Jesse Franklin did win it in the National League. And the National League Cy Young was Jack Flaherty. So that's some of the award situations. International free agents, nothing super interesting here. This guy, Jose Jimenez, would be the most interesting one. But I think I'm at a spot with starting pitching where investing in that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's some very good defensive shortstops out here. Both this guy, Hideo, and Sung-Jun Kim, who is already signed. But they're both very good defensive players, but frankly, I don't want to pay $7 million for a backup shortstop. So, nothing doing there. As far as the actual free agents that are out here, on the hitting side of things, I don't think there's anything that we're super interested in. I would maybe have been interested in like an Alec Bohm type if he wanted a more reasonable contract. But I'm not super interested in paying him, $10 million a year for 3 years. Like on like a 1-year deal or something, that would maybe be interesting. I actually wonder, he might be looking for a 1-year deal. So this could be something that I look at. Except he can't play third, so that's a little unfortunate. So he's coming off of a pretty good year with Baltimore. So I might not be opposed to doing something like this just because of Cabrera struggling last year. Hunter Dozier, also a 1-year deal. Play a little bit of third base. So that might be better. Also, right-handed hitter. There's a couple pieces out here. Ty France is unfortunately fragile. Also 1 year deal though, so there's a couple of options out here of guys that would kind of also fit the role that I'm playing Marcos Cabrera in. And I mean, really, I'd like to give him the shot. I think he's a better defender than all of those guys we looked at. Is cheaper. Sure why he's angry about roll on team. Probably because he was in AAA. We just recently promoted him. So on the pitching side of things, there are some interesting people. We got some of these relievers that are out here. I was going to be interested in Caleb Ferguson, but what? Like, this makes no sense to me. Why is that the contract he wants? I mean, he is high greed coming off of a good year. But like, oh, he thinks he's a starter. That's why. Dude, you have 35 stamina. You haven't started a game since 2020 where you started 1. Why on earth do you think you're a starter? There's no way he's going to get paid anywhere near that money. Somebody like a Seth Lugo or a Jeffrey Springs would potentially be interesting. Jacob deGrom is out here again, coming off of a good year, but more injuries. So, be interesting to see what type of a deal he gets. I think he's looking for a 2 or 3 year deal. Yeah, he wants another 3-year deal at 39, which obviously I'm not interested in. Potentially, I mean, Shane McClanahan is kind of interesting. I haven't actually looked at what he wants for a contract. It's a 2-year deal. Which I don't hate something like that, actually, to give me some options with Mizzotto. Or if I could get him on something like a 1 year, or like a 2-year deal with like a second one as a team option to be a lefty. AJ Minter looks like wants, oh wow, he wants a 4-year deal. So that's a little rough. So there's some interesting, yeah, Denny Bentley wants $6.3 million. I'm guessing that's just because it's me, where he doesn't want to be back. Press roll closer. Wow. Be interesting to see if he gets a contract anywhere near that. I will be curious to see what he ends up actually getting. Let's see, Jake Eater has not been good. His FIP says that he should be better than that, though. Brewstar Gratterall is unfortunately fragile now. I would be interested to bring him back, to be honest, as a reliever, though. So that would be kind of the biggest issue for me. Because he does just want the 1-year deal. I think mostly because he's out for, I think, 5 more months with the torn labrum. So 5 months from now puts us at the end of April, plus rehab means getting him back probably mid-May. So that could be interesting. I'm going to guess that he's not going to get signed for a little bit. So I might keep an eye on that. Spencer Howard is out here. Like a reliever now, I guess. Did not have a great year with Atlanta. Expectation is starting rotation, though. Minor league with a major league option. That's interesting. That's something that I'm not opposed to, just as a countermeasure against potential injuries. Dean Kramer. I'm assuming this is the same type of thing. Actually might be the better. Oh wow, that BABIP is so low. Yeah, he hasn't actually been good. The Spencer Howard has been, I guess, like fine. I might look at grabbing maybe something like this of kind of one of these guys. Oh, you are coming off of a pretty good year. Right, I might do something like grab one of those guys as a kind of counterbalance against injuries. But at the same time, I feel pretty good about where I'm at with pitching, even with both starters and relievers. So, I mean, I mean, all four of these guys have had some level of major league experience as starters. So, whether or not we actually need a guy like that, I guess I don't really know, because realistically, they're going to opt out after that month if I don't promote them. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're probably going to be pretty quiet in free agency here. I think it could have been fun to go after Vlad if he was out. Obviously, we would have had to make a decent amount of moves and stuff because we can't even afford this 32. We probably would have had to find a way to open up, 15 million, and that might have just been dump Kirilov somehow. Which, I mean, I think I could have done. I think I could have found a trade him for a 2020 prospect that's not anything. But yeah, so I think it's going to be a fairly quiet free agency. I think that's just sort of generally I think how I've approached this save in general is that I've been much more a try to trade for prospects and then just kind of develop pieces as opposed to going super hard in free agency with the exception of starting pitching. Of that something where I've been more aggressive and I've gone out and I signed Marquez, I signed Corbin Burns, I signed DeGrom. I guess I did trade for Alcantara, I signed Aaron Nola. So if there's options like that out there, then I won't be opposed to continuing to go after them. There's really not a good starter out here this year. I mean, DeGrom is available, but I'm not paying him nearly that type of money over that type of time frame. And then if I look at other starting pitching, it's Kevin Gausman, who's coming off of a kind of league average-ish year, is fragile, so like not any better than what I have, and then a bunch of like 50 overalls. I mean, Sixto is kind of interesting, but that's really it here. All-star in 2025. That's the last good year that he's had. It's like he was, average in Jackson or below average in Jacksonville off the high BABIP, and then below average again in Milwaukee, probably after a trade. So, yeah, there's not really a ton out here in this one spot I have attacked in free agency. Just kind of some minor league guys. I mean, the other kind of option that I would have had as far as going after Vlad in particular would have been to go up here and gone after like maybe decrease scouting budget a little bit, dev budget a little bit for a little bit of time. Okay, the fan interest did not drop with not offering Frelick arbitration. So that was the one thing I was a little bit worried about. But it looks like we are still good there. Maybe the calling up of Ayers and stuff like that is something that they were excited about. So yeah, that's sort of the off season. There's not really a ton that's kind of super interesting. Maybe one thing that I'll do after the Hall of Fame voting has its results this year, so maybe in the next video, I think I might go ahead and take a look at the Hall of Fame, because I don't think I've done that yet in this save, and see after, I guess that'd be 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So after six votes, who all has joined the Hall in this save. And yeah, still nothing super fancy going on here. We kind of have those couple more years before we kind of have some of these contracts start to be more question marks of when does Kirilov done, does Marquez opt into this in 2030, Correa's player option, Burns I think is almost for sure going to opt out here because he can make a lot more than the 20 million. I think barring injury, I think he's done here. Grinchek is there. We'll have to make our decisions on Buxton in the next off season of what we do there, because there are options for me in center field. But the one thing to look at for Buxton is this is not going to happen. Not for a player that I can't play more than 2 out of every 3 days, because that's been the only way I've been able to keep him healthy. Of this much money through age 41, like as much as I would love to have Buxton be on the Twins for the rest of his career, wrecked injury proneness has been good for sure. And as much as I would have loved to see him play his entire career here, I don't see it happening. I don't see myself paying him that type of money over that long period of time to continue to be a player that I can't play every day. So that will be an interesting kind of decision for us to be looking at next off season. I have to make a decision on Andrew Nardi. So yeah, I'm hoping there will be a little bit more kind of discussion points next off season. And then going into 2030, obviously there will be quite a bit. But yeah, no team options or anything for this season. So yeah, that is kind of the off-season plan. I think that we're still in a pretty good spot. It'll be interesting to see kind of how well we're able to replace Frelick in this next season, see kind of how Adrian actually does as a defender. Are we going to regret that? Do we have to have Adrian just be a bat? Which would not be great, because I'm betting on him being a left fielder for a long time. That's definitely what this contract is. But if he can be a left fielder for the next 10 years, then this contract is going to look real nice, because the bat is so good that I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be a good contract. And then Joshua Baez will kind of have to make some decisions on down the road. I can definitely see him being a non-tender candidate in one of these two spots, sort of depending on how he does, because it's not as elite of a profile. I mean, obviously he had a super good year, hit 33 homers, 280 batting average. But I also think that these numbers are a little bit inflated. I think especially this batting average. I don't see him being a 280 career hitter. I mean, if he does turn out to be more like that, then yeah, maybe we do extend him farther as well. But as of right now, I think we're going to hold off on any contracts like that. And yeah, that will be the end of this episode. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.